looking for positivity or looking for encouragement. Temia Brinson aims to educate you, to give you the push to believe, to have the mindset for success. Mindset for success. To have the mindset for success. To have the mindset for success.
Tonight we have a very special presentation for you. This is one of the journalistic pieces where I tackled the pertinent and controversial subject of black-on-black violence. And we shot this right after the deaths of 2 law enforcement officers and the manhunt that followed that. And this occurred in the Orlando, Florida community.
One of the things we're changing is the messaging, or having a positive message out in the forefront.
One of the ways that we can improve our community, and it sounds so cliche, but it starts at home. And it starts with the relationship between parents and their children. We've gotten, the kids have kind of like gotten out of hand. They've gotten away from us with the introduction of these social pages and the internet. The kids have kind of gotten away from us. In a way, it's our fault because we let the TV and their phones babysit them now. To pacify them, we give them the phone, we give them the computer pad, we let them get on the, get computer time. So we've got I think the family structure needs to be addressed again, and it's not like the Donald Trump "Make America Great Again" thing. It's just we need to go back to some older values that we had, eating together, eating dinner together, talking together. It's I mean, you'll see whole families, and you stop at a light and whole families, including the driver, are looking at their phone, and that shows a disconnect. There's a disconnect in the family, and not with all families, but I think that would be a really good place to start, where we start to focus on getting the family values back again.
What do you think, Thomas? Because, I mean, I've seen a lot of bad product, so to speak, come out of good homes.
Well, we'll never know what direction a child goes in. But I believe that it's very important that what we do in reference to what's seen in the home by the children. We can preach a good message, but a lot of times even our own actions are incorrect. And so kids learn from what they see more than what you tell them. If they don't see someone in the home who has a care for that community as well, it goes beyond just me and my family. But I have a certain amount of ownership, even with the children in the community that interact with my children. So when those children interact with them, when they come over, I should try to also give them some form of mentoring as well. I mean, our communities are missing one key factor, I believe, that's more important than anything else, and that is the ability to speak on call out what's wrong and voice what's wrong, because we have this new thing now where we just zip our lip when we see bad interaction, when we see the actions of others that are wrong in our community. There was a time when I was a kid, I think one of the key things that happened when I was a kid was the neighbor could straighten us if we did something wrong. Now, nobody wants you to say anything to their child. But the only problem with that is even the parent doesn't say anything to the child. So, we've become a society where children raise themselves.
Well, my problem with the community is having. Well, the problem with the community is that we don't really have a community as we used to have. Once upon a time, we had a community, like you said, where anyone in the community could discipline the child, and everybody knew everybody. But now, when you live in a community, you might not even know your next door neighbor. And your community is more than just your home. It's what church you go to make sure they got in the right school, who they hang with, and so on.
So what I was thinking is that since we're on the family and chastising or speaking up, I've read some incidents in Chicago where, because that's the thing now, with every incident they mention crime in Chicago. But anyway, one of the things that they said is that nowadays the grandparents who are raising the kids, or even the parents, or the aunts and uncles who are raising the kids, the problem child who, has a gun or whatever, out there stealing, they don't correct them because they're afraid to nowadays. So, what do we do with that? How do we get the family structure, even if we do get the family structure back together again? What do we do with these adults that's afraid of the kids? Or teenagers?
I think you just said something that was so powerful. The mentioning of the stranger next door. When you realize that now we have a community where no one believes the same thing anymore.
Wow. Sorry.
That's the true thread of a breakdown in any structure, whether it's family, whether it's community. But if we go to family, that's the most important part of community. So if we go to family alone, and we think about it, the family alone, even in the family now, you can't find families that believe everything the same. We went to church. So we went to church and everybody believed the word. But now, you might have one member in the family think they're Muslim, one's Christian, one's don't know if they believe anything. And then when it comes to aunts and uncles and those that you don't really know if they are as strict as the parent would have been with their child even now. It's like one believes, okay, maybe the child needs a gun. The other believes he doesn't need a gun. One says, don't fight. Go tell somebody about it. One says, fight. It's such a mixture now to where I think that's going to be like the biggest issue, especially speaking of Chicago. I work with a partner of mine. We have a company in Chicago that actually we go into the inner city there, into the school system. And what you would see in the school system is a common breakdown of kids who have no hope whatsoever for tomorrow. And that comes from home.
Yes.
It's coming from home. It's not that they come, for us it was like you went to school, you believed you was somebody at home. But when you got to school, it would be a teacher that would say something to you to kind of knock you off your rocker a little bit, where you feel like, I feel like I'm questioning myself because the teacher talked down to me and made me feel this way, or some other person that was in authority. But now, coming from home, they feel like they're worthless because the parents don't even look at them as somebody. So it's just a lot of beliefs, and that's a bad thing for our community.
It is, and I piggyback off of what Thomas was saying. It's a societal breakdown because it's almost anything goes. So publicly and openly to make a lot of people question God, whether there is a God, and to question God and to say, okay, what we're doing is okay. So, it's almost like anything goes, and how dare you judge me?
Right.
How dare you talk about me? So, whereas we had a day in America where we were almost all on the same page, we're not anymore.
Right.
We're not anymore. It's a question of morals, a question of value, and anything short of murder almost is accepted. Is accepted on some level. In some places, it's accepted. How dare you question my likes? Anything short of murder and some of these things that have to do with sexual crimes, it's every man for himself. And so there's been a breakdown, and Thomas hit it right on the head. It's in the family, man.
It starts with the family, but we have no control of our communities.
Mm-hmm.
None. And that's the biggest problem. You're afraid to let your kids go almost anywhere. So we don't build our own communities. We have no control. We don't decide what goes on in our communities. So, yes, we have problems.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I want to bring up a topic. I forgot which one of you mentioned it in your interviews, but of community policing. Is that, first of all, is it a factor? Is it effective?
Wow.
And, or do we actually need to participate in the police business itself?
One of the things that we studied in college was I believe it's in China, the most successful police structure that ever worked was community policing, where the police officer, the new sergeant came in and he changed everything when it came to the way policing happened. It used to be where they would just walk through the community, they would patrol, they go back and report. But then the crime didn't really go down just from their presence. But what happened, they began to interact with the individuals there, became friends with the individuals there. And once they became more of acquaintance, they could trust each other. And once they were able to trust each other, the crime rate went down because the community itself was looking out for the community. And they just had a friend that was a cop that could make things happen if by any chance they could not do it through their presence. So I think that they tried to model that in America, but despite how much they tried, they haven't been successful at it because of the tension of the past in America. But I believe if we begin to love our community enough, if you don't care about the community that you live in, I don't care what law you pass. The law will never change the community. It will always be the people who live in it and the amount of love they have for their community. And it's sad because most of the time you only hear the outrage when a family member dies. As long as it's somebody else's family,
Yes.
What a shame, but no hands on it. But as soon as it's, your family member, it's outrage. And I think that's something that we should really pay attention to. I think if we did more community policing and we cared about it, I believe that crime would definitely go down.
Well, community policing is the most effective way to police. And the problem we have is that the policemen don't become a part of the community. Here in the U.S., guys go into communities, they come from other communities. People don't know them. They ride through or walk through or ride their bikes through. But the people don't know them, they don't communicate, they don't deal with each other, so we really don't have community policing in the U.S. That's the problem.
COVID-19 has changed how we express our faith and gather to worship.
We all want to get back to how we pray,
how we congregate, how we lift our voices in praise. Now it's time to take the first step that lets us get back to spreading the word without spreading concern.
before we can safely come together, we need the facts.
As COVID-19 vaccines become available, you may have questions.
Should I get it?
Is it safe?
Should I wait?
It's okay to have questions. Now get the facts. Learn more at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans, and soon they will be available to everyone.
This vaccine means hope. It will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
I want to go back to work and I want to be able to move around.
To visit with Michelle's mom, to hug her and see her on her birthday.
You know what I'm really looking forward to is going to opening day in Texas Ranger Stadium with a full stadium.
We've lost enough people and we've suffered enough damage.
In order to get rid of this pandemic, it's important for our fellow citizens to get vaccinated.
I'm getting vaccinated because we want this pandemic to end as soon as possible.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
So roll up your sleeve and do your part.
This is our shot.
Now it's up to you.
And then let me put community policing in this light, where we of the community police ourselves. That would help a whole lot. And that's the old school that we're talking about. And that's where I come from too. And I come from a neighborhood, you all, where everybody knew everybody. My next door neighbors, yes. And all the way, not just my next door neighbors, but the whole block. Right. We knew everybody on our whole block. And I was talking to my wife the other day, and I was longing for the time where that was true, where I could walk, and Mr. Smith, Mr. Reisinger, Mr. Jones, I knew everybody. And what happened was, and I grew up, and I'm going to interject this, I grew up in a white neighborhood in Miami. My whole neighborhood was white in Miami. And then when we moved in, we started to see them move out. Now, the black families that moved in, the same sense of neighborhood and reaching out to one another was there. And in about 1980 or so, it just started changing. No more speaking to one another. As certain people moved in, we didn't make the effort to go down and say, hey, we're the Fosters, how are you, welcome to the neighborhood. And inevitably, we all became strangers. Right.
Well, the problem is you don't have a neighborhood church, a neighborhood school,
And even within
a park,
This is good, right? When we congregated, we all met at the park every day.
That's right. And you knew everybody in the community.
Every
Now, everybody goes there different.
Yeah, yeah. And even with the churches, there's no mingling.
Wow.
It's so sad.
Yes.
You know, even with the churches, there's no mingling.
Except for the small church.
Yeah, you know,
we
it's,
mingle here.
you know, when you have, we've split the community. And when I say we, I'm not talking about the church has split the community. Our mentality as African Americans has split the community. We have a stigma on each other to where if you come to speak to me, you're after something. You might rob me. You might be coming to my house to shake my hand so you can see what you can take. That's the thought process that we developed. And you know, it was a time when you travel to New York, when you travel to the city outside of the countryside, you would see that mentality where it was like, we coming from the country, we wave, everybody drive by. And everybody wave back. Even if you don't know each other, you spoke. In the city, it's not like that.
It's not like
if you speak, it's like, what you talking to me for? You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's the stigma we've attached to each other, and I believe that, you know.
Did we do it to the community, or was done from outside?
I think it's a matter of both, but I'm gonna tell you, we went to a Magic game. You know, you have to park down there off from Paramore and church and all those places. I was ashamed of myself because when you go into some of the neighborhoods, I was fearful. These are my people. And I was scared. Yeah. and you know, I got it.
Extra cautious.
Yeah. And I'm like, where does this come from?
That's not a bad area. Yeah.
Where does this come from? So,
but now you understand how others feel. And when they come in the black community.
It's a stigma.
Yes.
You know,
it's what Thomas is saying.
But that is not a bad area.
It's really
not a bad area. It's not dangerous there, but you have this perception
right.
that it is.
You paint this picture, and we spoke about this earlier. The content of a black film paints us as the dope boy, the robber, the mugger, the gangster. Stereotypes. And whether you do it directly, whether you know it indirectly or directly, your mind connects to that stereotype and it paints that picture. So even if you go into a neighborhood that looks a certain way,
yes,
you automatically throw your guard up from what you saw before.
Yes.
Doesn't it go back to what he alluded to, where does this come from us, does it come from the outside?
It's a mixture. And that's why I said a mixture. Because the reason why I say it's a mixture is because it's those who can gain off of us. They love the fact that they could sell something like this. So they gain from that. But then those of us who we trust to be our mouthpiece, that film the films,
yeah,
they also paint the same picture of us. So the combination, what you see, it's just like a child. If a child grows up in a home where father and mother is fighting all the time, and father is always calling her out of her name and beating on her, 9 times out of 10, that young man's going to grow up disrespecting young women. And will disrespect his wife until he learns something better. But it's the learning process. It's the see it and you become it. You are around that environment, you become that environment. And that's what they do through media, through the film, music industry, everything paints that picture. And we don't help it.
So what is the solution to stopping that? Should we censor our own media from our own people, or demand a better product?
You can easily do that from the ground up. It's easy for us to say that from the ground, but you have to have an audience to sell it. This goes right back to the family. If someone's teaching their If you're guarding the ears and the eyes of your child, then they'll know that this material is garbage material. This doesn't speak for who I am. So they won't attach to that. They won't buy that. I believe it was, I was telling you earlier about how most of our movies, they stereotype ignorance through our people. And it's like you see a white film, and you just label it as a white film, but you'll see a film of other ethnicities. And they have a storyboard. It tells a story in the movie. It paints a picture. It takes you on a journey. It's life. And it's like, you see this, and then when you see our film, it's somebody either cursing out somebody. My dad used to call it foolishness. We're so full of foolishness. Like, we want to laugh and be entertained so much that we don't realize that we're killing ourselves in the process. Because what we feed our brain through wanting to be entertained is destroying us, because our actions start to look like what we eat.
My God. And I come from that era of black exploitation movies. And when one came out every week, Superfly, Coffee, Shaft Base Corps, The Man.
Come on.
Oh my
I come from that era, and you see the other races mimicking us. Whereas, and I guess they call themselves getting our flavor. But I have to piggyback on what Thomas is saying. It's all about what's put out there and how it's received, and how we again, I think we okayed some of this stuff. I think some of it is our fault because we let it go. There's a movie called A Soldier's Story. Did you guys see A Soldier's Play? And in the movie, there's a kid that plays a guitar. And they were over in Germany, where the Germans already thought that we had tails. There was a bunch of racial stuff going on. The sergeant is a proud black man. He wants him to stop doing this pickaninny stuff. Where he's shucking and jiving and bucking his eyes, watermelon eating, chicken eating, all that. He wants him to stop that for the sake of his race. But there's an entertainment value that goes along with it that Thomas alluded to.
Yes.
That we just allowed to run rampant and get away from us. We are not in control of the narrative anymore. We're not in control of that anymore. So, and it's just out there. So now that the white kids call each other the N-word, and it's okay. It's okay. It's transcended race.
But you know the communities that we're talking about, the people live there did not design those communities. Many of the communities, like the projects in Chicago, they were built for blacks, for low income. And you put them all in one place, you're going to have a problem. And cities have been doing that for the last 75 years. I was talking to the city manager here in Groveland, and he was asking me what was my concern for the city. I said, well, one concern is to make sure that we don't build slums.
We will continue with this presentation next week.
You have the mindset for success. If you're looking for positivity,